Let's bring this meeting to order. I got to take a roll call. Mayor Pro Tem here. Mr. Reitenbach here. Mr. Anderson here.
Present.
Mr. Barnett, you here? Mr. Spears, you here?
Here.
Mr. Waddell, you here? And the chair's here. And we start off this meeting with C1 is approval of the minutes. C2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a multi-year contract with American Uniform Sales Incorporated of Fayetteville, North Carolina for the purchase of Wilmington Fire Department uniforms of budgeted impact of $51,674 per year, $258,370 for 5 years. C3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Playcore Wisconsin Incorporated for the Maids Park Playground and Equipment Installation Project. C4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase 15 police vehicles from Capital Chevrolet Incorporated of Raleigh, North Carolina, in the amount of $833,384 from the Fleet Replacement Fund. C5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase 2 recreation vans from Parks Ford HV LLC of Hendersonville, North Carolina, in the amount of $101,705 from the Fleet Replacement Fund. And then C6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Level Solutions Group LLC of High Point, North Carolina for computer hardware, software, and support in the amount not to exceed $290,000. Going to public hearings, PH1 is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Wilmington to rezone property located at 3803 Peachtree Avenue and 3802 Park Avenue from RB Regional Business to MD17 High Density Multi-Dwelling Residential District. And then PH2 is an ordinance amending the Land Development Code Chapter 18 for various amendments and cleanup items related to dimensional and design requirements in the UMX and CBD districts, allowable setback encroachments, and corrections to section numbering. Ordinances, 01A is an ordinance making supplemental appropriations in the amount of $373,092 to the Holly Tree Road at South College Road intersection improvements project, and you can see the budget impact is $373,092, and that's interest, earnings, capital balance. And then 01B is the ordinance making supplemental appropriations in the amount of $165,763 to the Market Street at 21st Street Hawk Signal Project. Mr. Anderson, I know you're very happy about this. I am too. 01C is a resolution authorizing the award of a construction contract in the amount of $815,191 to Morgan Trucking and General Construction Incorporated of Charlotte, North Carolina for the Holly Tree Road at South College Road intersection improvements and Market Street at 21st Street Hawk Signal Project. Yes, sir, Mr. Reitenbach.
I'd like to go back to
01B?
01A.
01A. 01A, please.
For a length of time, I've asked for and never got, and don't expect to get it now, but at that intersection of Holly Tree and South College, to me it would make a great deal of sense to extend just not a path, not a part of our cross-city trail, but a sidewalk from that corner up to Mockingbird Lane. And in doing so, you would open up the entirety of Longleaf Hills to the cross-city trail without having to negotiate College Road. I don't think we're talking about more than 500 or 600 feet. It would go in front of the YWCA right there to Mockingbird Lane. I just think it's a safety issue.
Councilman Rivenbark, that project is being submitted this year to the CIP for consideration for funding.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, we hope it makes it.
Yes, sir, we understand.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, that's a good idea. It's a great idea, actually. Okay, let's move up to resolutions. I believe I've gone through 01C. And then finally, resolutions is resolution supporting the North Carolina Department of Transportation's application to the United States Department of Transportation for the Bridge Investment Program to replace the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. And I just want to say, I know that Luke and Neil are both on that MPO committee, and of course, that came out of, it was a big surprise that the department or Chad Kimes came forward and made this presentation to the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, to look at possibly getting federal funding to help make this a reality instead of possible toll funding, which is a great thing for the community and city. So appreciate that. Mr. Manager, don't leave. Where are you going? You're on deck.
I'll come back one more time. Pardon the interruption. We have two items for you this morning after the agenda briefing. The first is an update on the Riverwalk Extension feasibility study be done by Sally Thigpen.
I'm sorry, I just want to say one more thing, and I forgot that, Clifford. I'm sorry, because it came back to reports. There will be a report from the council's naming facilities committee, and Councilmember Barnett is the chairperson of that committee and will be making that report. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. My name is Sally Thigpen. I'm with the Community Services Department, and I'm going to provide you with a brief timeline on this project, the results that were found, and potential next steps. So in the summer last year, you appropriated $50,000 off the hook yacht sales. The owners of the Cape Fear Marina north of the bridge came forward generously with $10,000 to contribute to a feasibility study to extend the Riverwalk. In August, we engaged Weatherall through our on-call engineering contract, and in November, we were submitted a proposal that exceeded the available funding. Again, Council appropriated funding for the study, and Off the Hook came back with an additional $10,000 donation to move it ahead. In the spring, Weatherall provided staff with a draft, which we reviewed internally across our departments as well as with the MPO. And in August, the final document was accepted. Today, I'm submitting the findings. So what is the Riverwalk Extension Feasibility Study? Just a quick reminder, the Riverwalk's northern termination point is currently at the northern end of the Sawmill Apartments property, south of the Isabel Holmes Bridge. There's an unfunded, unprogrammed CIP submission to extend this Riverwalk under the bridge, terminating in the vicinity of the JEL Wade Drive off of Cornelius Harnett Drive. And the report's project scope was to include this extension to the Gervais Freedom Walk and City Park that connects the north side neighborhoods to downtown. It would provide safe pedestrian connection to the Riverwalk and Riverfront Park and provide additional connections to the north side of the city, both for access and potential development. Here's just a view of the Riverwalk from the Sawmill Apartment dock looking towards the bridge, and then the area where the connection would begin. And then the second image looks back under the bridge from the other side from the Cape Fear Marina dock. You can see the marsh and Riverfront Park in the distance there. The scope of this study included all of the usual things you can imagine: environmental assessment, survey, utilities, looking at potential alignments, structural geotech, a review of the stakeholders, and an estimated construction cost. The study did find feasible alignments with pros and cons to each, which I'll go over here in just a minute. So the first alignment is in red, number 1. This follows the traditional path of the existing boardwalk along the waterway and allows for the best views of the Cape Fear River. It doesn't impact the wetlands, it doesn't impact the NCDOT protected mitigation sites, which you can see there in teal under the bridge, and it provides direct access to the boat docks. It is the longest alternative and the highest cost, and it does cross the Cape Fear Marina boat dock loading area, which I don't know that I can point to it, but, oh, check that out, excuse me, right here. So it does cross Cape Fear Marina's boat dock loading area here, which could be of concern depending on potential development in that area. The second alignment is red to green, so it comes under the bridge here, oh man, and connects down to the green. This also follows the traditional path of the existing boardwalk and allows for the best views of the Cape Fear River. It doesn't impact the wetlands or the NCDOT protected mitigation sites, and it allows for the most clearance under structures. This was the preferred recommendation from the consultant. It does potentially, or it does reduce the potential impact to Cape Fear Marina, and it does have a slightly lower cost because it's shorter in length. The third alternative is in yellow. This path goes through the marshland and could provide some excellent educational activities along that route. It does unfortunately impact the NCDOT mitigation sites and the wetlands, although this could be overcome with design elements. Also, it does not traverse the shoreline of the Cape Fear River, impacting the views and visibility in general. The fourth alternative you can see in magenta. This is the shortest route and could also provide those educational activities, slightly lower cost, but has significant impacts to the mitigation sites and wetlands and the properties north of the bridge. The orange route is the connection to the Freedom Walk, and there was one alignment proposed here, being the best one. It does have to traverse the CSX property there, which could be complicated, but we believe could be accomplished. Any questions at this time? So the estimated costs were based on different decking types. We asked them to look at timber, composite, as well as concrete. Alignment number 1 being the longest, in the $8 to $10 million range, depending on the decking type. You can see alignments 2, 3, and 4, pretty similar costs between $5 and $7 million, with the Freedom Walk connector being approximately $1 million. And the consultants recommending alignment 1 or alignment 2, the red or red to green. Additional costs, which future costs, could include design construction management, right-of-way acquisition, time, security cameras, et cetera. A review of the stakeholders was considered, and our consultants met with representatives from Off the Hook Yachts, Harnet's Landing, NCDOT, and CSX. And the results of that are more laid out in the actual study, but generally have been favorable towards the possibility of this extension. I have several supporting informational slides, which I'll just go through quickly. They are detailed more clearly in the actual study. But the review of the environmental was conducted. Survey and utilities helped to inform the alignments of the proposed extension. Hydraulics were reviewed. Structural, so it's a 12-foot wide deck with matching our existing Riverwalk standards. Geotech. And then I also wanted to point to the comprehensive plan, identifying this area as an area of opportunity where the Riverwalk could act as an important catalyst to achieve what is described as inner city revitalization and to use pedestrian walkways to enhance connectivity and access. It also points to this area as open space and green connections, realizing a green connection called out for in the plan specifically. So at this point, as I mentioned, it is an unfunded and unprogrammed project. There's certainly interest in this important asset that our city has across our riverfront. Staff will continue to explore potential funding options, including legislative potential partners, working with the CVB, certainly additional public input, and grant opportunities. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. No, sir. I believe it is some, it's property up there, and I'm sorry, I don't have it directly in front of me. But that is some privately held property up there north of the bridge. Exactly right. Sure.
What are our opportunities for grant programs? And I just, out of curiosity, and maybe someone knows this, maybe someone doesn't. On the entire Riverwalk that we have built, did we get any kind of grants of any sort over the years? Or was that 100% based on general fund allocation?
You're predating even my arrival here. Not to my knowledge have we obtained any grants, not in the last 15 years.
And I don't know how difficult that would be to get any additional funding from grant opportunities. I see a lot of communities that are going for these grant opportunities, Riceville Beach, Belleville, Leland, all these different communities. And I'm just wondering, on this one, is the attachment to the grants so complicated that we just kind of not really pursue it, or is it, you know, I know that we've gone for Tiger grants over the years for the Cross City Trail to try to cross Bradley Creek, and we weren't able to get that, but is there an opportunity to start being a little bit more aggressive in those aspects of this, and can you phase it in? I guess the other question I would have is the determination of being able to phase these projects in over a time period, as we have done with most of the Riverwalk, and then how much participation would the owners of the property that is north, the Harnett Landing and all, how much would they be willing to participate to connect the two, maybe meet halfway?
Let me try to get a couple of those tentacles that you've got out there. First of all, I think grant opportunities are available. There are grants that would not come near coming close to covering the cost, but could be used to offset a bit of the cost. Two programs in particular come to mind immediately. You mentioned the Tiger grants. Those are something that Deputy City Manager Tom Moten and I have already had a conversation about, not with regard to this project, but with another. And that might be something. I would also say that the General Assembly has been a bit more liberal in handing out individual grants for municipalities and counties recently, and that might be an opportunity, especially with the overall relatively large cost of this project and it not really falling into any particular category.
Well, the other thing is when you go down, let's just say, I'm just taking this as an example, when you go down to Charleston where they built the Ravenel Bridge, they put actually they put a visitor centers, for those of you that have ever walked that, underneath the bridge. And I'm just wondering if, you know, from the public point of view, from the public space, if you could take it all the way, at least to the other side of that bridge in the future, if you wanted to phase it in, where you just stopped it there and you just tell the people there, as they build and develop that property on the north side of the Isabel Holmes Bridge, if you want to meet us halfway, there it is. You can connect to it with, you know, with our, obviously our specs and conditions.
There are two opportunities for public-private partnerships on this. One is just very much what you had already said. Talk to the partners north of the bridge, see if they're willing to come up with whatever portion of thereof. They've been very forthcoming with the money for the feasibility study. I imagine they would be interested in participating otherwise. The other is that if you could assemble enough of that property up there to come up with a comprehensive plan, much in the way we did on the north end of downtown, we may be able to build a financing option based upon revenue produced as a result of development up there, but that would require far greater pieces of property and probably unification of ownership up there.
Got you. So Tony, and maybe y'all can tell me this, on the study that we just completed that was jointly done here, or how long would that study be good for? And what I mean by that is, let's just say down the road, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, another council wants to pursue this or take a look at this. Is the study that we have done kind of the right-of-way, if there hasn't been anything built in that right-of-way, which I don't believe there would be, could you take the study out and dust off the dust and go back at it, excluding obviously the cost?
Sally?
Without having to restudy it?
I believe so. I mean, certainly the cost would be impacted depending on the length of time, but unless there are dramatic changes, and certainly in terms of environmental geotech, I think they would be pretty solid.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Good work.
Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you, Sally. Next, we have a rail realignment update for you from Aubrey Parsley.
Starting in the end. Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Just have a brief update for you on the rail realignment project. It's been a little while since I've spoken to you on this project, and we are ready to hit another milestone, so it's a prudent time to bring you up to speed on where things are. First and foremost, I always like to start by saying We are still very much on budget for this phase of the project. We are performing from a budget perspective to the grant in large part or entirely thanks to having a fixed price contract with our consultants that we negotiated back in 2020. So we have been able to stay on budget. Total project cost for this phase of the project is $2.5 million, and that's what we end up expecting to spend to the penny. In terms of schedule, we did have to extend the performance period of the grant by a year, which you see highlighted here in yellow. If you were to look at our grant program, these are the 4 main phases of the performance to the grant. NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act, and that is effectively producing a federal environmental document is what that one captures. The 15% engineering design and 30% engineering design are fairly self-explanatory. But as you can see, the bulk of this grant centers around producing a federal environmental document for the project. And we have hit some milestones here recently that bring us to a time this month where we are ready to release what's called our environmental assessment document. It's the culmination of effectively 3 years of work to, at a high level, have the project assess what the puts and takes are of the project in terms of the benefits it brings versus the impacts it has on the environment. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I just question, on the environmental impact analysis, it's a right-of-way. It's a rail right-of-way. What's in it that's so environmentally sensitive, since there were railroad cars and trains going up and down this corridor for years with rocks and everything else in there? I've walked a lot of it. What?
This is for the new route, the new alignment over Eagles Island.
Going all the way. Oh, okay. I'm
So
sorry.
there's yes, sir, quite a bit of new environment that railroad has not traversed in the past, although there is some historic railroad that the project does make use of.
Gotcha.
So it's studying that new territory is primarily what this centers around, but you're comparing everything to the existing conditions, which are what you just described in the document. So the milestone that really freed us up to be able to release the environmental assessment document, which is planned for this month, we're just waiting for one final concurrence from the Federal Railroad Administration, is the completion of what's called Section 106, which is effectively the historic resources and assets review of the project and how the project could impact those historic assets in our community. We just, in August, received a no adverse effects from the State Historic Preservation Office, which the feds recommended and the state agreed with. So that really freed us up to release this document here in November, and it'll be going out to the public for comment. And after that document goes out for comment, we will be moving things forward in terms of reaching our 30% engineering design. The public comments for the environmental assessment document will be due in December, and things will just move forward from there to wrap up in April of 2024. So as we near the time of releasing this environmental assessment document, which I expect will just be within a couple weeks here, we will be putting out a press release and making plenty of communications known out there that folks can go and review this environmental assessment document, comment on it, and allow us to take those comments and respond to them in the form of what's called a FONSI. Finding of no significant impact is what that acronym refers to at the end of the project, and that will be the last final document produced for the NEPA part of our grant. And if everything goes to plan, we will have performed the grant by April 2024. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Mr. Ridenbar.
What size grant are you referring to?
What size grant? Well, this is the grant that we were awarded back in FY18. So we took the money in 2019. It's $2.5 million that we're spending to get the 30% engineering design and do this environmental work. So we will have concluded the performance of that grant in April 2024 is what I'm expecting.
Okay. I'm a little confused. We got the money, and we've done all this work, and that money has paid for it.
Yes.
Okay, and so at April 2024, where do we stand then?
Then we would have to consider going out for additional funding to continue the project from there.
Do we wait until then to do that, or do we go ahead and do some prepping, pre-planning?
There's been some internal pre-planning on that. Nothing that's quite ready for council yet, but yes, there are significant grant opportunities out there with the infrastructure bill that passed, especially in the railroad space. So there are some grant opportunities that I'd specifically recommend the city pursue, should that be council's desire in the future.
And I have one more. And how does that tie in with bridge design?
It really, so the bridge is contemplated in the resolution before you tomorrow night is a highway-only bridge, as I understand it, is they're positioning it as a highway project. So it'll continue to be a situation where these projects in the early phases of the projects continue to share information and look for ways to collaborate, but not necessarily attach any of those strings up front.
So the reason I asked that part of my question was, I know it has an effect on the design of the bridge, whether it be a high-level bridge or an elevator bridge or just what. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, yes. Yeah, for all this work that we've done so far, we've collaborated very closely with NCDOT to make sure that the projects are compatible insofar as the railroad's not getting in the way of the highway and the highway's not getting in the way of the railroad, and also keeping the door open for being able to work together should those ideas and designs and things coalesce.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been told that an elevator, the railroad and the bridge being built together would restrict the type of bridge that you can build. You can't put a high-level bridge with the rail concept or part with it. Is that fair?
So we had a study done by a firm called Hardesty in Hanover, which is a bridge engineering firm, very highly regarded in the space. There's not many engineering firms left out there that do movable span bridge design work. And we asked them to come up with a concept to see how highway and rail could coexist on one structure. And for that study, just to allow for a better comparison of costs, they did restrict the highway at 135-foot vertical clearance and contemplated a rail movable span beneath it. And for that concept, for that study, which again was to compare costs, it did restrict the navigational clearances some, which you could go ask the Coast Guard to consider reducing the clearances. Or the engineering firm also stated that they restricted the highway span at 135 feet, again, to allow for better cost comparisons, 135 versus 135 with rail beneath, so you get a sort of truer sense of what adding the rail component means. But you could raise the overall elevation and likely accommodate 135 feet total clearance with the rail component was the engineering firm's conclusion as well. So you could do it,
Okay,
was their opinion.
I know your explanation covered everything, but I'm going to ask one more. You're saying that the engineering firm says that 135 feet is possible, and the rail component would be movable, like it would be elevator type, or it goes up like the one up here on north?
No, elevator's a good way to think about it. It's effectively a giant elevator that would lift the rail span to nest under the highway bridge span.
When it's not being used?
When it's, when there's a big vessel that wants to pass, it would rest in a lower position,
Okay.
was the concept.
I guess what I'm driving at, Aubrey, is a high-level bridge for vehicular traffic versus an elevator bridge, because we've lived with that since 1969, and
Right.
it's a pain in the you-know-what.
Yes, sir. Yeah, what the concept that this engineering firm came up with was there would never be a situation where highway traffic would stop as a result of rail or maritime traffic.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir, Mr. Anderson.
Now, Aubrey, maybe I'm confused. It sounded like you were telling me that engineering firm, they did a lower bridge than what the Coast Guard has asked for. Is that not correct? And is
So
it
then what the
core?
current clearance
We
is.
paid for something that was kind of useless in my book. But it's got to be. It was supposed to be a certain height, and they did this whole plan on a lower height. Is that not accurate?
Not entirely. There's some nuance there, Councilman Anderson, which is they did it that way to allow, the whole basis of the study was to determine, A, if dual mode is feasible, and then B, to determine what adding the rail component would cost. And so the best way to create an apples-to-apples comparison of cost was to keep the highway bridge the same and then add rail beneath. But that isn't to say things couldn't change on the profile to allow for an overall navigational clearance that could still achieve 135 feet.
The bridge design we saw from that firm was at 135.
What I'm saying is that concept.
Was it or not?
The concept could be adapted to 135 was what the engineering.
The
firm's
engineering drawing I
conclusion was.
saw was lower than what the Coast Guard has asked for. Is that, you're telling me I didn't see that?
I'm saying the concept allows for it, and there was no direct dimensions on it. But yeah, when we presented it to WMPO, Councilman Anderson, we did, they did go up there and say, with 135 foot on the highway, the rail, the navigational clearance on the total then would be 117 feet. So, correct, at that presentation, that was shown, but there is nuance there to say that things could be, the concept could be adapted to clear 135 feet total.
Is DOT excited about the idea of putting the rail underneath the highway?
I don't want to speak for DOT. I think that they continue to work with us, and you know, be up to the WMPO and a number of other boards to determine how best to proceed on those on that project. And we were just showing another option.
I understand, but we need to be working with the DOT and not on our own.
Agree.
Yes, sir.
Working with DOT.
Yes,
We are
sir.
working with DOT.
Yes, very closely. In fact, all the bridge environmental work that they've just kicked off, we are sharing quite a bit of environmental work that they are making use of.
Aubrey, you make a great press secretary. That was very well, the way you kind of covered yourself like that. My question is this. My question is this, Aubrey. So let's just say, let's hypothetically, that the DOT doesn't really want to attach this to the bridge for cost purposes. I'll use that as a hypothetical theory. We still feel that because of the growth of the port and because of the deepening possibly of the channel all the way to the mouth of the Cape Fear, is going to bring in more container ships or container traffic. And at some point in time, maybe not now, maybe not in 5 years, but let's just say 10 or 15 years, the container traffic coming out of the Port of Wilmington gets much more significant than it is today. Would you, or would us, the city, which has the bigger concern about this because of the 38 crossings and the amount of time it takes to get around, would you look at the possibility of, I guess it would be a southern alignment, it would be south of the bridge, where they're talking about building the new bridge today, which would be south, correct?
Yes, our environmental document does allow for that option. Yes,
So,
sir.
so we could move it a little bit further south.
Yes, sir.
So I guess we could cross without even interfering with the new building of the bridge or whatever bridge structure is going to be built in the future. I guess when you get to the west bank of the Cape Fear, and you have to take it somewhere under the highway at some point in time to connect with the 421 corridor that goes up into the Davis Yard in Navassa, isn't there, are you having any discussions about that possibility, about when you get further on the west bank, going under whatever structure is going to be built, wherever, whether it be an interchange there, what have you, to get it? Because I see that there's a train that runs out on 7476 there by I-140, where Martin Marietta has a yard there where they bring marl and sell it, what have you. So that goes under the a bridge there, highway bridge there on the I-140 piece. So have y'all had any discussions with them about looking at that alternative or having a secondary alternative that doesn't connect it to the bridge?
Not in a tremendous amount of detail, Mr. Mayor. The environmental assessment document contemplates what's there today, since it wasn't a program-funded project, and we didn't know what that interchange would look like. We had it drawn up with the railroad going over the current alignments, but the bridge project, as the bridge project progresses and as that interchange design becomes better known, there could be opportunities to go underneath, but under or over. Those are the only two options. And exactly where that occurs, there's some flexibility in the document to sort of determine that in the future. But yeah, there's just, with the 135-foot fixed, it really focused on crossing the Cape Fear and didn't look much at that interchange on the west bank. So there's just not a lot of detail around how that would work out.
Well,
today.
I would just hope that we're able to adapt and to make changes, because I think the DOT is focusing 100% just on the bridge. We've got secondary concerns, a big concern here, But I think somewhere in the future, whenever that future hits, somebody's going to be talking about another rail span to get over the get over the Cape Fear to take the container traffic out of the port. Because with the way this county has grown and the way this region has grown, I can't imagine long trains coming through here and blocking traffic for 20, 30 minutes, or possibly even 15. I think it would create a tremendous amount of disruption. But I hope you're also thinking in that respect that if you have to go to that route or a different route, take all that into consideration.
Yes, sir, we absolutely will.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey.
Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of meeting notes for you. First of all, reminder that you will not meet tomorrow night. You will meet Wednesday night instead. Tomorrow night is election night, so just a reminder on that. Second is you'll have your first budget workshop. It is now scheduled for Friday, November 17th. Just wanted to remind you of that date. You will be having that workshop in 929 North Front on the 12th floor in the conference room. So we will be in that room for that meeting. And then third and finally, your second meeting of November is actually during Thanksgiving week. If you chose to move that to the next week, it would mean meetings back to back for the second meeting in November, first meeting in December. But the first meeting in December is largely ceremonial, as you know, and so preparation for that meeting would not be difficult. We just wanted to float the idea out there to remind council that your second meeting is during Thanksgiving week, and if you'd like the opportunity to change it, you'll need to go ahead and let us know.
Okay. Do we, my wife told me to tell you to do that. Yeah, so
Well, by all means, we will do it now.
I'm voting for that. So I'm just saying. Is that good, you guys?
I'm good. I mean, for anybody that's traveling on that weekend, especially if you're flying, anything could happen. That's probably the busiest weekend for travel, I believe, in the nation. So, I mean, I'm okay with it. Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, why didn't we schedule this meeting? I'm flying this week.
What's that? Kevin, go ahead again.
Why didn't we reschedule this meeting? I'm traveling this week.
I don't know.
If
You're traveling this week?
we're gonna reschedule that meeting, we should have rescheduled the meeting for this week.
Yeah. He just said, I think he's traveling this week after the election, I believe. Is that right, Kevin?
That is correct.
Yeah. So he's saying if you're changing it for this, why don't you change it for that?
Well, I'll just say that if you have it the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I will not be here. And I believe Clifford's not going to be here. I don't know about anybody else, but have it whenever you want.
I mean, we have remote capabilities, technology.
Absent action by council, it'll stay on the 21st.
On the 21st?
Because you got consensus?
Because council has to amend the schedule of meetings, and if you're going to have it on the 28th versus the 21st, you'll need to take action to amend the schedule.
All right, so do we need a vote for that, or how?
When we put our schedule together, it's much like things that occur right around the Azalea Festival or others. Those need to be taken into consideration when y'all float that schedule out to us. I mean, everybody knew when they put it out, the 21st was Thanksgiving week, we put it out anyway. I mean, plan ahead, look ahead. I'll give just as much blame to us up here for not catching it. But, you know, once the schedule is made, unless it's something real dire, I just like to stick with the schedule. So, anyway, I certainly appreciate Cliff having to go home and tell Waltrina, you know, what happens. I wouldn't want to do that either.
So do we need to take a vote? Is that how we do it? Tomorrow night?
Do we have to do it tomorrow night, Tony, or can we do it right now?
Yeah, but
Madam?
the attorney tells me it'd be better to do it tomorrow night. Or Wednesday night, yes, thank you, thank you.
All right, Wednesday night it is. We'll check,
All right.
we'll take everybody's temperature then.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
okay,
Audit committee is meeting.
Yes, audit committee meeting immediately follows this.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Stand adjourned.